Welcome to Attican Plays Railway Empire. Alright, welcome to another Railway Empire video. This is Attican, and we're going to take a shot at the random map generator and try to set up what I was thinking would be as difficult a setting as you could possibly get, which would be the least number of cities and the least number of rural industries, in other words, farms, mines, what have you, so that you've got lots of competition for a small number of cities, and the resources that you need to grow those cities are going to be hard to come by because there are so few of them. So left everything else default, but wanted to set up a really difficult situation to see how we can handle it. And we're going to do minimal money, three very hard competitors, and we're going to do Trainiac mode so that we're going to have extra hard tasks, and our stations are going to get more and more expensive as we go along. Now I'm just thinking about, where to start. If we started like there, I was tempted to start in Cheyenne and start at the extreme end, thinking that might be harder, but then I thought, let's not get crazy here. So I took the one they suggested, which was Salina. And we're going to start there with the Trickster and see what kind of tasks we come up with off the random map. And this is my first playthrough on the random map generator. So we got to connect Salina and Tucson. We've got to connect a bunch of people to our network, buy a little bit of Beatrix, and we have to make a line to Salina that has a max length. So my thinking is, let's get that out of the way right off the bat. Just make that line. That kills off a couple of our tasks and gets us off to a great start. Now, when you play these random maps, of course, well, first of all, you don't even know where the cities are, so you have to kind of look around and familiarize yourself with what's going on. And I'm also just looking at the map to see, okay, we've got any good beer meat lines, what are we going to do, where are our industries, how many, how bad is it if we only have 20 industries, just how sparse are they? So I decided to go ahead and get that line going to Tucson right off the bat. So we're going to run a direct line from Salina to Tucson, and just to state the obvious, the way you make sure you have those when you have that max length requirement is run a straight line directly from the one end to the other, and then see how long that is, and then see how much room you have to play with to kind of get away from a mountain, get rid of a tunnel, whatever. Now this one was super easy. They really cut us some slack here because it's a straight line. There's not a lot of there are no real mountains to go through. There's that one rise right in here that has that tunnel. We get rid of that tunnel and straighten up these bridges a little bit, get rid of the bridges, or most or all of the bridges that are on the line, and it'll be a very reasonable cost, and it'll get us off to a good start because we'll have our first line done. We'll have a couple of tasks done right off the bat, and we'll be rocking and rolling. So there, on January 5th, we've got a couple of our tasks done. We've connected Tucson, and we've connected Tucson in a direct connection with a max distance track. So great start. But now we see we've got a lot of people to load up. We've got to get Amarillo involved, and we've got a biggie there. We've got over 9,000 passengers have to go from Salina to Amarillo nonstop. So that's a lot of passengers on a little map like this with these little tiny cities. So obviously we're going to have to do some city growth. We're going to have to get the connection going. So looking at that, well, first of all, we're going to stick with our principles. One of our principles is if two cities are worth connecting, they're worth running a double track, they're worth running trains on and making money. We don't want to build these connections and have them sit out there and have one lousy train running on them, or even none. I guess some people might even do that just to say, well, I got the connection. Never run a single train line on city to city because it's just We've done the route optimization studies. If you haven't seen that, go back and find that fundamentals video about route optimization for the city to city. It'll show you that if you run a single train between lines, it's going to take you like 11 years to recoup your money. You might as well have not done it at all, because you'll be done with the scenario before you ever get your money back. So we're going to build this up and run some trains. I am going to do something a little different in this one. I decided to put supply towers near the cities. I keep going back and forth on this, whether I put them in the middle, put them on the ends. I'm going to put them on the ends in case I want to run other, like some freight or something else, some other line in and merge it with that line. I'm kind of thinking, well, do I want to do that now? Do I actually end up doing it? I don't think I actually end up doing much of that, maybe a little bit, but I wanted to be set for it in case I did. And even if you don't, even if you run a separate line, you can still line it up and swing it in so that it can catch that supply tower. So it can save you a little bit of money. And so that's not a bad idea. So this is probably a good way to do it. On a really long line, you would run, if you were doing this, you would run towers at each end and maybe put an extra one in the middle. But here you notice we're going to run some trains here. I believe you've got to run trains if you want to make money, because you can make money running, say, a couple of trains back and forth, but the rate of return is so slow that it just slows down your whole game. You've got to have a bunch of trains running to make money at any decent rate. And you've got to have a bunch of trains running if you want to get passenger traffic, because the passengers will only wait so long. So now decided, since we've got that huge passenger number for Salina Amarillo, we're going to start that right away. We're going to get that going as soon as we can. So I'm setting up now the line from Salina to Amarillo. But I'm not going to run passenger only, at least not for a while, because I want the cities to grow and I want to get any money I can get out of freight revenue at the same time. And the trains are not going to be full. So, it's not like we're not hauling passengers because we're hauling freight. Now, we might not attract as many passengers because we're hauling freight. Our service won't be as fast and won't be as attractive to passengers, but we'll still get off to a good start and keep our cities growing. So, of course, we're already in debt, and we're not a problem. We just open up our bonds and keep on going, keep on building. So now we've completed another task, which I think is connecting Amarillo. Oh yes, connecting Tucson, Salina, and Amarillo. So they gave us pretty easy connection on this one. I have to say thank you to the task generator. But now we're going to double track to Amarillo and run trains back and forth, automatic lines between Amarillo and Salina. Now here's a case where I decided that line was long enough to warrant adding a tower in the middle, just to make sure that we didn't have trains running out of supplies before they could get to the other end. So now we're going to set up trains running, as I said, automatic between Salina and Amarillo, and they're going to make good money for us and keep our growth going, and we've already finished off like 3 of our tasks. Now, one of the things that's challenging about doing these in 1830, this first time period, that grasshopper very slow, and if there's any elevation, any slope changes at all, it really does slow down quite a bit. It just, I mean, let's face it, it's kind of a go-kart on railroad tracks at best. So we it takes a while for the money to even start coming in when you're running the grasshoppers, because it takes some of these lines take them a long time to get from one end to the other. And that's one of the reasons you have to run a lot of trains, because to get that steady flow of income, you got to have a lot of trains running back and forth. Plus, if you don't keep that frequency up, you're not going to get any passengers. So, it just takes a lot of trains. So even though they're cheap, you got to use a lot of them to get the job done. So you can see here, we're not being shy about trains. We're going to run a bunch of trains between Salina and Amarillo. We need to keep that passenger flow going. We need to make money. So trains it is. In our research, we're just going to grab, freight increases, passenger increases. It doesn't really, there's not a huge strategy, I would say, for the research here. It's not like I targeted some specific thing. Like I sometimes do in the next time period, the 1850s. I have some targets I like to get for the cheaper trains and stuff. But it's 1830s. It's all good stuff, like 8% increases in your freight, 8% increases in your passengers, things like that. Ticket prices going up, mail prices going up, all that kind of stuff. It's all good stuff, but there's nothing that really jumps out at you and says, oh, got to have this, got to have that. So I basically just grabbed low-hanging fruit for the research. So I'm really focused on that, connecting all those people, because these cities are all very, very small, and there's no big city that we can go grab that's going to help us. Now, what we will do here, a couple things. One is we will expand and get out and hook up with other cities as quickly as this money's going to let us. But at the same time, we're also going to take advantage of our competitors. And remember, one of the key things to, I think, becoming a competent player at this game is learning that your competitors are really a big asset for you if you use them correctly. And one of the things we'll do is make sure that we hook up to the cities that our competitors are growing and participate in that growth. So we'll funnel off some of their business and take, passengers to and from our city to their city, so to speak. But we will have that connection to the cities that they are growing, and that will help us hit our objectives and help us have profitable lines. So that's kind of the part of the thinking there. And there really isn't at this point anything that scares me about these tasks. These tasks are, I think they're challenging, but they're not that hard. They're not super, super hard. Obviously these here we are with our small train stations up to like 65,000 already, or 60, whatever that was, and look at this cost to expand this station. Almost $100,000 just to expand the station, add one track to it. So, and you can imagine it's just going to get worse and worse. So that's where the challenge comes in. But again, I've said this before, it's really kind of more of a nuisance, or something that just, it's like a governor that slows you down a little bit. But it isn't an insurmountable obstacle at all, because if you're doing this correctly, you're continually making more and more money. You're building a bigger and bigger empire that's making better money on your lines and more money on your any industries that you own and what have you. So it really becomes the high price stations become a pain, obviously, and they slow you down a little bit on your growth. But again, you can always do it because you can always just come up with more and more money. There will be, I'll give you a hint on this one, there will be a point where the money's just really pouring in, even from this little teeny map, and it's nice. But you got to work your way to that point. And the key to getting to that point is building these profitable lines, running plenty of trains on them, and like we're doing here, building up your staff, because the staff can double and triple the income that you're going to get on any one train running in particular lines. So when you get that nice three-person engineer, stoker, conductor on a city-to-city line, or you get those security guards on your direct freight lines where they're getting that bonus on your freight, 5% bonus. When you start getting that kind of stuff loaded up on your system, like here, we've got all these happy people. That train's going to do great. It's going to make good money, period. So you want to get your staff, and again, I've said this before, but your staffing is sort of city-to-city lines. You want engineer, stoker, conductor, and on all of your direct freight lines, like this one we're trying to set up right now, which is cattle to Salina, because there's a meat industry in Salina. We're going to run cattle straight to Salina. You want to have security guards on those because those lines are going to run frequently, and you're going to get a 5% bonus. So that instead of making $16,000, you're going to make $16,800 every time that they land. That's an extra $800 every time they come in, and they're going to come in frequently because there's a steady need for cattle in Salina to support that meat industry. And the same thing with any of your direct lines. So that's kind of the idea with the staffing. I know this is repetitive, but there's only so many things to tell you. We're really starting to get the game, I think, a little bit figured out. At least one good way to play it. And in fact, that reminds me, I wanted to say that would be great. I would really love it if some of you guys, because I know some of you guys are better players than I am. And I would love to have you guys take this same setup, the same random generator. You can pause the video back at the beginning and get that. I know the seed was 42, because apparently somebody was a fan of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. But the seed is 42 that I used, and then copy that code. I forget what they call the phrase now, but the code after the seed. And I believe the way it works is the seed kind of determines the map, and the code determines the set of tasks that you get. And I'd love, again, anyway, I'm babbling on saying, I'd love for some of you guys to try this same setup and see how you do. See if you can see and kind of give us, if you can't do videos, do a screenshot. Just dump a screenshot out there for us to see. Or just tell us in a comment, here's how I did. Here's the tactics I used, and here's how it went. And play this different ways, because obviously that while we're kind of got the basic method of the game, I think, pretty much under control. And the whole rapid expansion pass-through warehouse, all that stuff, that applies to so many of these now, although I didn't use it here. But I didn't, and I'll get to that in just a minute. But I would love to see you guys give it a shot and try it and post your scores and tell us how you did, and give us alternate strategies, because the whole point of this channel is for all of us to get better at this game and to enjoy the game more. And what did I start to say? Oh, I started to say about the random generator. One of the things that's nice about the random generator is, if you think about the kind of our evolution of our channel and the way we've kind of walked through developing the tactics and strategies that we use, that rapid expansion with the pass-through warehouse, it applies to so many of the maps and so many of the scenarios, and it's just such a good, solid way to play this game that you could almost become repetitive with it, and it could actually force you to get the game to get boring. But with the random map generator, because you can now set up different number of cities, different number of industries, different map, we could make one. In fact, I'll try another one later where we make it very, very mountainous, and that'll be an extra challenge to put in there. But anyway, you can modify kind of the difficulty and the challenges you're going to have, and that's going to probably force you to use different strategies, because like here, for example, I can't really necessarily get beer meat, beer meat, beer meat the way I'd like to, because they just don't exist. The industries aren't out there yet. I don't have enough money, starting capital, to build the industries myself. And so you're just going to have to play with what you got to play the cards you're dealt. So and because this random map generator kind of deals you a whole new hand every time, it makes for a good challenging game. So that's why I'm kind of excited about the random map generator, and I can't believe I didn't talk about it when I gave you guys the update on version 1.3. I just cannot believe I left it out. But to tell you the truth, when I first read it, I thought, who cares? The maps are already nice. But now thinking it through and thinking through the ability to switch things up, it's going to be nice. It's good to have new challenges for the game. All right, so we're set up our direct line there with the cattle going into Salina. And now we're going to use our strategy. For the next thing that we want to do, we need a fair amount of money. What is the next thing we want to do? I'm going to have to watch along with you here for a second to remember what I wanted to do. I want to connect San Francisco. It's got a beer industry already existing. So I wanted to connect it up with the meat industry over here in Salina, so we could get a nice beer meat line running there and get some profit and help both those cities grow. So it's going to take a fair amount of money to do that. So I wanted to use the strategy of pay off our loan, our bonds, and take out bigger bonds, so that we're always getting more and more cash that we have to deal with when we do our expansions. And I'm kind of caught in the middle of it. I think I'm really between thoughts here. I think I had two things in mind. That's why I'm kind of stuttering right now, trying to figure out what's going on. I want to think about buying Beatrix, or at least part of her now. At the worst, buy a portion of Beatrix's stock now, so that we can get that task completed quickly. And of course, ideally, you want to buy 100%. When you try to buy a competitor, the best thing to do is buy 100%, one big bite. But since we have that 80% target out there pretty quickly, I want to go ahead and do that as fast as we can. So now we're going to. But then I looked at that and said, "Oh, I want that beer meat line to San Francisco." So that's what we're working on right now, is the beer meat. And of course, along with that, the advantage of having the beer meat line San Francisco to Salina, we also are still working on that connect 240,000 people to our network out in these little tiny towns, which means we got to connect towns, and we can get more people from San Francisco with the connection, but also, again, because it's beer meat, we should be able to grow both ends of that and increase the number of people connected to our network. Now, early on in a game like this, where money is the big deal, these professors can be handy. I hate giving up the research points because that research, obviously, the sooner you can get like an 8% increase in your freight prices, obviously, the sooner you get it, the better it helps you all the way through the entire play. But there are times when you need research and there are times when you need money. And right now, or particularly early in the game, if you've got specific objectives you're trying to get to, you need money right now. So the professor is a good play early, often. Sometimes not, but often he is. And so here here's low-hanging fruit. There's a meat industry in Amarillo. There's a cattle ranch right up there above it. There's a connection bonus for that cattle ranch. So I'm interrupting the whole build out to San Francisco line just to make sure that I can get that connection bonus, because it's something I'd want to hook up anyway. And if you can get all or part of it funded by a connection bonus, then of course you want to go for it. And I was tempted right here to just connect it right into that end, and I thought, no. You want to have it coming into a separate line. You don't want to, certainly don't want it competing with that very important line to Salina. So we're going to do it right and make sure that we have it connected in. Now, I could have, gone, if it had been really tight on the connection bonus, like it was about to expire, then could have gone ahead and made that little connection and then deleted the end and moved it over after the fact when we had a little more money. But to expand the station, because again, here's where that Trainiac mode is coming in, because that expanding that station is expensive. So now we've got it expanded. We can run that line to the correct platform, have its own platform dedicated to running that meat into Amarillo. We'll make good money on that line. We'll get our connection bonus as soon as we have enough money. There we go. So we'll get our connection bonus and got a kind of a freebie connection there. That's always beautiful. And we'll start making money on that cattle line going into Amarillo. And unfortunately, I think, it's meat to meat Salina Amarillo, which is less than optimal, but it actually has kind of a sort of a silver lining, if you will, is that we want passengers anyway, so we're not going to have too much freight. There will eventually be freight moving between the two cities as they grow new industries, but right now there's not going to be a lot of freight moving between them because it's a meat to meat line. So that just allows us to gather up more passengers in the early going, which is all good. And here you notice I'm going to go grab a security guard that I had put on a city-to-city line. And I just put him as kind of a placeholder on the city-to-city line to give him something to do while we waited. But now that we have this direct line with the cattle going into Amarillo, they'll run very frequently, and that's the right place to have a security guard. So as these security guards pop up, as we get more and more rural stations hooked up to our network, we'll start connecting them up with all of our security guards and making sure that we're getting that bonus. And then, of course, again, somebody like a conductor like this that we just have, we're going to put him on one of the city-to-city lines because that's where he can do the most good for us. So we're still working on that, getting people connected. We're maybe a little under halfway there at this point. And now we got to see, okay, what's it going to cost us to buy our good friend Beatrix? You also probably notice I turned off the comments. I turned the audio portion off of the competitors' comments because I really did get tired of hearing Beatrix's life story and all the little side comments they make. They're cute. They're very cute the first few times you play the game, but after a while it really does get old. So I'm way past that point. Probably most of you are too. I'm way past the point where her comments are cute anymore. In fact, I think I could speak for all of us when I could say Beatrix's comments were never cute. They were always annoying. The rest of them were kind of funny. So I'm looking at, that's Beatrix up there. She's the orange. So right now I'm kind of noodling over buying her out. If I buy her, do I keep her property? Do I liquidate her? Do I keep her property? And as a general rule, I think if you're going to play Trainiac, this Trainiac game mode, where the stations get more expensive, when you buy out the competitors, it's probably a good idea to keep their infrastructure. And then you could always go back and delete the track that's in your way, the messy track that they tend to lay, and stuff like that. But keep the stations, because those suckers are expensive, and in Trainiac mode. So if you kind of follow that philosophy, you'll get the stations in these cities that the competitors have built, and you won't have to pay an arm and a leg for them. So I think as a general rule, and that's what I've done pretty much the few times I've played this in Trainiac, buy out a competitor and keep their infrastructure, and then clean it up as I go. And of course, if you've watched a lot of my videos, there are times when I get toward the end and I just get lazy and sick of it and don't clean them up as much as I should. And I'll give you a spoiler alert, that's going to happen in this one too. So Don Lorenzo was nice enough to get us some free press and hurt our stock price, but we really don't care. They can report all they want to. It really doesn't do much to you unless you're in this tight situation where the competitors are starting to buy you out. And if you are in that kind of a situation, it's probably an indicator that you've got some room for improvement in how you're setting up your lines and just general approach to playing the game, because you're not making profit fast enough to keep the competitor from buying you. So you need to really kind of work on getting these city-to-city lines going, getting the city growth going, getting the raw materials fed in there, etc. So here's a good-sized city, and this is where Don Lorenzo really helped us out. Omaha has grown as a decent-sized city, so we're going to hook that into our network and help us with that 240,000 goal. So here we see a window of opportunity. We have to own eventually 21 businesses. That's one of our objectives. And here's a chance to put an industry in Tucson. Actually, it's first industry. And we're trying to see, we'd love to put a sawmill in there because we know there's logs nearby. But we also see there's cotton just to the north of Tucson. And textiles are available. The sawmill isn't available yet. We're too early in the time frame. The year that the sawmills become available hadn't arrived. So we're going to put a weaving factory in Tucson. That'll give us a business. We'll make money from it. We'll run cotton down to it, make money shipping the cotton, and make money on the weaving industry as well. And all in all, a good deal. And we get a nice bonus for it. So about a 25% off discount because of the connection bonus or the new industry bonus. So now we can see we're getting better on our connections. As soon as we get this Omaha connection going, we'll be much better off. And we kind of interrupted the flow there for a second because we had that opportunity to put that business in. Now we've got our connection to Omaha, and we check, and we're getting a lot better off. We're a lot better off on our connections. We're getting close. And one way we're getting close, of course, some of our cities are continuing to grow that we do have connected. Right this moment, we have Salina to Tucson, up to Amarillo, that's 3 cities, over to San Francisco's 5, and down to, did I say that right? Let me try that again. Salina to Tucson, to Amarillo, to San Francisco, to Omaha. So that's our 5 cities, and they're all running through Salina. And there's a purpose for that, as well as just the fact that Salina is where we started. Because of that line that we have to run those 9,000 passengers up to Amarillo, anybody going up to the north, we want them to come through Salina. That way they'll take the Salina train to Amarillo, and we'll get good traffic. So people coming down over from Tucson and down from Omaha, and eventually if we connect any other cities to the south or east, would all want to come back to Salina in order to get to the north, up to Amarillo or even to Cheyenne, up further north. So what I did avoid on this one was building, even though I wanted to because it would have been a profitable line, San Francisco to Amarillo I did not build, and particularly didn't build like Tucson to San Francisco because I didn't want Tucson traffic going through San Francisco up to Amarillo. I wanted to go over to Salina and then up. So really, Salina is kind of a hub. This is I didn't really plan this out, but it worked out this way that Salina ended up being a hub for us. And now we even have an opportunity, if we had the money, we could put a business in Omaha. So now we're looking at if we connect down to Rock Island, will that be enough? Will that get us where we need to go? And it's pretty close. So we finally gather enough money to build our second track on that Salina-Omaha connection. Now we can set up the line and start running trains and making some money between Salina and Omaha. You may have noticed as well, another thing I did on this one, went back to the interim signals on the city-to-city lines. Again, I was kind of thinking, well, maybe I'll run extra stuff in there on those lines and merge them. And also, honestly, it's easier to set up if you use the, assuming you're on a PC and you have that functionality. I'm not sure where you guys on the consoles are at this point, but if you can make those multiple interim signals with a single command, it's a pretty easy way to hook up your lines or to set up your blocks and your lines. And so I took that route on this one. I know I go back and forth. I really can't decide. It's much better to not have all those multiple signals on city to city as you start out, because then you can just fire up, how many, 6 trains, 8 trains, however many you're going to run, 4 trains, whatever, and they'll kind of spread themselves out because you only give them so many blocks that they can run in. If you use the interim signals, of course, they can just run right behind one another, and you don't get that kind of automatic spread. On the other hand, like I said, it is easier to set up, and it's more versatile if you decide to add something later you can merge lines in there with and still have plenty of blocks to fit your trains in. And if you don't know what I mean by a block, basically a block is, and I'm pretty sure this is basic railroad terminology, a block is a section of track, and when a train is running, it will look to the block ahead of us from one signal to the next signal and see if there's anything in that section of track. If there isn't, it'll go ahead. If there is, it will stop. And so however many blocks you have set up by your signals, your stations, and your supply towers, that defines how many trains can actually fit on your line. If you go back to the fundamentals videos, I cover that in more detail. But anyway, that's the basic idea. So when I'm saying block, I'm basically meaning the distance or the set of the track between a signal and another signal, or a supply tower, which is an implied signal, or a station, which is an implied signal. And really, actually, I say implied, but the supply towers have signals in them, built into them, and the ends of the stations are signals. At least in this game. Other games handle it a little differently. So now, remember, we're still working on connecting 240,000 people. So now we're going to go down and connect Rock Island. And it's a little bit clumsy because our opponent's already in there, and we got to set up on one side of him and run track on the other side. And he's got some freight lines running in there, making it hard. So there's no easy way to do this, but I decided to just put that station in the way I would want it if I eventually owned it, which of course I will. And now we've got to pay buku bucks to expand our station, so we got to wait till we get some capital. Give us another line so that we can do our connection, and then we'll be able to connect Omaha to Rock Island. So there, we got our expansion. Now we're going to set that up, and we're going to have to do a little bridging over top of that existing line that our competitor has. Clean up our line, make it reasonable price, and then we'll have a connection down to Rock Island, get a bunch more people hooked into our network. And yet one more profitable line we can run. Now you notice there I checked, I'm looking to see there's still bridges. That it's telling me I'm spending $54,000 on bridges, so I'm going to make sure I get rid of all of them, except of course in this case I can't get rid of all of them because I need to get across that opponent's line. So that's not bad right there. So now we're up to 205,000 versus a goal of 240, so we're almost there. And city growth will, in all likelihood, take care of the rest of it. Now, I went away from that too fast. I noticed that two of those people aren't getting along, so now I've got to decide who's worth more to me. The accountant who gives me better locomotive prices, or the surveyor who gives me cheaper lines, and I decide the locomotive prices are better. And you combine that with the discount that the Trickster's already getting, and the locomotives are pretty cheap at this point. At least until one of our competitors steals our employees away, as they just love to do. So now we've got enough funds and we're able to complete that line down to Rock Island, double track it, and get it set up so that we can start running trains on. We can't quite afford supply towers yet, but we're close. It won't take long. And again, the research here, I kind of thought about passenger traffic, but really didn't have a master plan for the research on this one. Maybe that's a flaw in my playing, and if one of you can think of a good research strategy given the set of objectives we have, please put it in the comments. That would be appreciated. And here we see we've got another bonus for a new industry. So let's slow things down and see what can we do. And this one's kind of interesting, as it turned out. So we're looking around to see what we've got. Love to put a tailor shop. Well, actually, I thought about that. I thought about, boy, I'd love to put a tailor shop in San Francisco and connect it up with Tucson. But I just got through saying, and I'm thinking this as well, you know, if I put that Tucson to San Francisco line in there, then what could happen is people could take the train, potential passengers going to Amarillo and points north could take the train to San Francisco and stagecoach to Amarillo, and we would lose out on the opportunity of getting Tucson traffic to go across and back up from Salina, which I think they'll do, and I couldn't swear to it, and I don't know if I probably could have used the flow to see passengers. I wish I'd done that. Now in hindsight, I used the flow of goods. I think there's a passenger option. I'll double check that before I set this out. So let's assume there is. I could have used the passenger flow to see how the people are getting from Tucson to Amarillo. That would have been downright intelligent of me, but unfortunately I'm just not nearly that smart. So we did put an industry in, and we ended up putting in another textile industry. I think. Yes. We put in another textile industry, and now we're going to hook it up with the cotton. And to tell you the truth, I think I kind of went to sleep here. I think I forgot about that line down that we put in earlier down in Tucson, the textile industry that's down there. So now I've built one in each place, and I didn't run any cotton into Tucson. And here's the other dumb thing I did. I must have been having a bad spell here. But I left a big old bridge on there, which was totally unnecessary. Very sloppy. I mean, I'm sure y'all have noticed I get sloppier and sloppier as the game goes on. I get a little tired or a little bored with it. Now, I'm not bored at this point by any stretch, because this is fun, because there's still a lot to do and a lot of challenging tasks to hit. Toward the end of the games, I do get bored. Once I know I've got it under control and I know I'm going to hit all my objectives, I do get a little bored and get a little sloppy. I unfortunately got sloppy early in this one by putting that bridge there. That was just sad. That was a waste of money right there, when money matters. Now, later on, money doesn't matter, but right now, it really matters. But anyway, at least I did have the good sense to run that cotton line into San Francisco, and had I been even more on top of it and had more money and been thinking better, I would have bought the cotton industry first and then run the line. That would have been better, because we need to own industries. But again, later on, when we have tons of money coming in, or we would hope, if we're playing well, if you're going to have tons of money later in the end game, you can just buy stuff, and price is not really the object anymore. That's kind of sloppy, but it works. So it's funny, every time we, in this playthrough, every time we start to build a city-to-city line, it seems I get interrupted by some opportunity, like to place a business. But I kind of put that line on hold for a minute while I went over there and dealt with that opportunity to build a business. And now we'll set up our line between Rock Island and Omaha. And it'll be a good profitable line because, well, first of all, we can ship the beer down to Rock Island, which they will appreciate, and we can get passengers and mail going up. And we can also, this is going to help us in, with that whole Salina Amarillo thing, because anybody in Rock Island that wants to go to Amarillo, an obvious way to do it would be train up to Omaha, train over to Salina, train up to Amarillo. That would be the best route they could take. There's no way they could take Stagecoach and do any better. So that's going to help us out with that connection. So now we've got our connection. We've got all our people. It's the end of 1832. So that's close. I think that should be 100%. I'm not sure. That should be good enough because usually you have 50% of the actual goal. So we had to get it done by 1834. No, I take that back. It's a little too long. We needed to finish in the middle of 1832, and we finished toward the end of 1832. So, we might be behind a little bit. Might have had one that didn't work for us. And there I do see, there's our confirmation. There is a passenger's flow that we could have checked. Man, I wish I'd used that. I've got to start using that more. At least I had the good sense to use it here. I'm looking for veggies because veggies are one of the things we have to have, and we have to own a bunch of them. So I want to buy the vegetable patches. And here's the great thing, or the tough thing about this map. We only have 2. And one of our goals is to be producing 14.4 vegetables per week. And just to put that in context for you, a vegetable farm, level 1, creates 0.8 vegetables per week. So if we own both of them, and they're both level 1, and we're shipping constantly, we would be making, 1.6 against a goal of 14.4. So obviously we got a lot of work to do. And that, by the way, is an interesting thing that we use to tackle that problem. Looking forward to showing you that in a later video. This one's going to get cut off here pretty soon because we're getting up to a pretty good length on it. In fact, while we're talking about, let's just stop the presses right here. We've got our connections done. We've connected to Omaha. We've connected Omaha to Salina to Amarillo. We've got to start on that big flow of passengers up to Amarillo. We're now starting to look at buying Beatrix, and we'll take that back up when we continue this in part 2. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it'll help you become a better player, and I hope you'll join us for our next Railway Empire video. Thank you.